Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Rich Revolutionaries podcast. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Dr. Joan Borden. I'd love for you to introduce to the listeners who you are, what you do, your magic in the world, so we can get a taste.
That's one. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Shanice. I'm really excited to chat with you and connect with your listeners. I'm a, I would say I'm a disruptor. I'm a Western trained doc, and now I only do bioenergetic work. I I used to call it bioenergetic healing, but it's not that I don't think anyone needs to be healed. I think it's more that it's an experience of what else is possible. Because I was very, and we'll get into this. I was very disillusioned by conventional Western medicine for myself. Not that I don't use it and think it's an integral part of healthcare, because it offers some unimaginable things that we didn't know thousands of years ago. And it's not enough to get the quality of life and health that interests me and my clients.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I'm really curious to hear, like, what was that moment of disillusionment for you, or like the lead up into that opening to perceiving more from what you would have learned in medical school?
Well, I always had, we talk about generational patterns being brought forth in life. And my mom was always very interested in, and I don't even use the word anymore, but at the time, alternative medicine, because, and I don't know where that came from for her. And she's no longer here, although she does still speak to me. In fact,
Mhm.
I just heard from her recently, and that was very unusual. And so I was in school and I was in my first year of clinic, which was a big deal. And I was in a shopping center parking lot in Baltimore where I was going to school and dental school, University of Maryland. And I couldn't get out of the way, and someone rammed into my driver's side, and I saw them coming, but I couldn't get out of the car. I couldn't move the car. It was just, and she didn't see me, and I had
Mm,
real whiplash. And
mm,
that changed the trajectory of my life, because conventional Western medicine was great in identifying what the issues were. Whiplash, I literally used to think whiplash was a BS thing. And then I realized, oh, I can't even hold my head up in bed, even with, so I was wearing a collar and nothing helped. None of the traditional things helped. And my dad, who had been helped by, it's a funny story. He had some blood thing going on with his cardiovascular system, and he was at a specialist, and the specialist was trained in China, and he also did acupuncture. And my
mm,
dad was really helped by that. And so he said to me, well, because my folks lived in on Long Island in New York, and he said, well, try and find an acupuncturist there and see if that helps. And I
mm,
did, and I said, oh my God, this changed my life. Not only did it change my physical status, it really began a very deep personal journey for me.
mm,
Very
mhm,
deep. In fact, I almost feel like weeping to think about that moment because it was so dramatic. I haven't really thought of that in a long time.
mm,
It changed everything because I said, oh, people don't know this. They don't do this. And this is everything. And it was changing my trauma, because the body mind connection, we all bury everything inside if we can't not receive it or not release it in the
mhm,
moment of occurrence. And so
mm,
all those people think that as you age, all of these things happen, like you get hip problems, hip replacement, shoulder problems, this, that. But it's not from aging. It's from
Mm,
not releasing at the time of impact and improving the situation then. And then I follow Taoist philosophy and medicine a lot. That's really my energetic background, in addition to many other things, craniosacral, the osteopaths. I've done a lot of work, and now I just kind of move my hands and move the energy. From all the cultivation, it wasn't that well, I was born with a lot of intuition, and
mhm,
that was my role in the family. I was born to heal, clearly. It was so, everyone had stuff, and I was kind of as a child, I was the firstborn, and I was the person who created the strategy for my family. I have two brothers and my parents, and I was the one who was always creating the space for people to move, even as a small child. And I don't know,
mm,
I think we come in with certain things to heal, and that was probably some of my fragments that needed to be healed.
mm, I love this conversation. My belief is that when we're drawn to doing energy work in whatever modality it is, that it's not the first time our soul is interfaced with reality in this way. And so, what you're describing about being the one to hold the space for the movement of energy in your family, when we're young as children, like our soul's expression is allowed to move through us with less interference, with less interruption. And so hearing that, I'm like, oh, yeah, you've done this before. You've mastered this in lifetimes before, and you're just continuing that work. And I love the perspective on aging as well, because if we're looking at ourselves as just like a physical body, then yeah, we're operating in linear time. But when we shift that perspective to seeing ourselves as like 99.999% energy, then, well, energy is not bound to time and space. It's more nonlinear and it's more of a factor of, okay, how am I caring for my energy? How am I allowing for a fluidity here? And that is going to dictate the state of our physical being more than this like aging process. And then bridging those two things together, I hear a lot of people who have this calling to this path of working with energy or of expanding our perspective to the great beyond, whatever that is for you, have this what I like to call a God smack experience. And it sounds like yours was that car accident. And I'd love to hear more about kind of like what was going on in your life before, and then through finding acupuncture, through healing this whiplash injury that you sustained, what new trajectory did this set you up for?
It's really, that is just such a fabulous question. And I just thank you for this podcast, because these questions are a little bit like a therapy session, and I'm really enjoying, because I've lived such a long life now. I'm so grateful to be 74. I'm going to be 75 in February. And it's true. That was a really big smackdown. And I never think really now, although I know what was going on, I never really connect that to what was going on. And it was very clear to me when you just said that. It was like, boom. I was in a very strange space. When I went to dental, I was always very bright. Honestly, I didn't really study much in college. I didn't need to. And
Mhm,
I did very well. And when I wanted to go to, it was just a lark that I went to medical school. I had no, I was very artistic. I had not taken hardly any science in school except one quarter semester. And it was like, oh, this is what I love. And
mhm,
so I went back and I took other things because I had a younger brother who was going to medical school, and it was his thing. He always wanted to do that. And I thought, oh, that sounds so cool. I'm going to do that. It was like, there was no real, there was soul forethought, but no
mhm,
real human forethought about it.
mhm,
And at the time, I was really going through it wasn't just the physical crash smackdown, it was my whole being was so confused by where I was and how I was being. Because
Mm.
I remember, because this is so interesting to have this epiphany in this conversation. Oh, so what you asked me about, what was happening, just really, I was not in a space where I was in my body.
Mm.
Everything had been my family. There was, like everybody else, not everybody else, but I had my own family of origin trauma, totally misunderstood. I never realized that I was really collapsing time as a child. But, when I started to hear about this in the personal development world, I was like, oh, that's what I've been doing for all these years. How, oh, yes, yes, I made it smaller, bigger, all these things. And when I got to medical school, and we had a million, every week we'd have like 10, 15 tests. You were tested for every little thing. And I had never done that. I'm an Aquarius. Sun,
Ah.
and I was more like, you know, the galaxies are mine and, this. And then having to really be so exacting was a real smackdown. And so I would actually sit in an exam and kind of black out. And so when that first happened, I thought, well, what's going on? Am I having brain problems, whatever? So I went and got checked, and then I went to the health center there and the psychologist and all of that. And I realized that I could not be in this constricted space. And
Mhm.
so I left. And that's what was happening. And so once I realized that and I wanted to be there, I changed it so that I could be present and I did well and I graduated and all that. However, it's really interesting that that crash happened right around the same time as I was in my WTF state of where am I, what's going on, and what am I doing here? Not just as a human, but in medical school. And
Mm-hmm.
that was really, it's so interesting. I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have my own similar story of when I was in business school and I got hit by a car. I was actually crossing the street as a pedestrian, and sustained like many injuries in my pelvis. I have some facial scarring that you might see here for
Oh,
those
yeah.
watching
Uh-huh.
the video version. And it was like a similar story, right? I went to business school because my parents didn't have the opportunity to have university funded. And so they're like, this is the pathway you're going to take. At the time, I really wanted to travel the world and explore myself more. This is a very type A person at the time. I was super academically inclined. I loved math and science, but I knew I didn't want to pursue the medical professional pathway. I didn't feel a sense of resonance or desire around being in a clinical environment. And so I went to business school. 2 years in, I was going down a pathway of substance abuse. I had a phase of my life where I was really lost in drinking and drugs and the party lifestyle. And in the middle of that, of course, experiencing a lot of dysregulation of anxiety, depression, while still maintaining a dean's list standing in academics. So I had this like double life going on. And my like Godsmack moment, getting hit by that car and actually having to relearn how to walk. I was in a wheelchair and on crutches for many months. And similar to your story, my family was always into like alternative medicine, and they had this energy worker man that they would see when they had issues with like neck stuff, back stuff, and at the time I was super averse to everything that was like healing or therapy or anything. I was just like, that's not for me. I was just very blinders on at that point in my life, but I had nothing to lose. So this man came and did a treatment on me. And he explained to me that when we get hit by a car, our energy gets really scattered. And in order for our physical body to heal, to bones to mend, to learn to walk again, it's a matter of like collecting the energy and organizing it with coherence. And so he did that for me. And that day, I started walking again. And I was quite, you could say arrogant at the time. And I was like, oh, whatever. Like, he just gave me permission for what I already knew I could do, but the medical doctors were saying not to, which, has some truth to it too. But what I experienced after this whole divine intervention moment was a renewed lease on life. Suddenly, I wasn't so depressed anymore. And I was asking those deeper existential questions of, like, okay, well, what do I want to do? Like, what is of like purpose for me? And then I did actually start on a trajectory of traveling and became a flight attendant after graduating, and explored different perspectives and cultures in that way. And that enriched my life so much. And eventually down the road, I ended up training in Reiki and becoming a Reiki master and doing energy work with that. Also theta healing and different modalities, and discovered all of these soul gifts that I had. So I want to hear anything that you want to comment on from my story, and then your kind of point B part of what happened in your like divine reorganization.
Well, that sounds like an amazing event you've been through. And I was curious as to, was it very much after you had the healer work on you and you walked that you started moving into other things, or was there a space in between? And what was that like?
Hmm. There definitely was a space in between, because this was the first time in my life where I was sitting with myself in stillness. There was I had a really intense concussion, so no screens, no like loud music, no bright lights. My life was composed of that, right? I was in the bars and the clubs with my friends at the time. Now I'm like 6 years sober. And so there was a lot of layers of grieving that came up during that time. And I remember just like surrendering into it and allowing the waves to hit me and crying and feeling these like depths of despair that were just always suppressed and numbed with substances before. And yeah, I definitely think that that created the spaciousness to explore other facets of life.
That's really amazing, that space. And you know what I've noticed about that space? Lately, I've been really acknowledging all of the little grief spaces. The more I'm able to be present, and it's an ongoing process. I find that I've always said to people, even when I was just doing dentistry, I would say to people, I was still doing personal development and coaching, even though I was pretty much a cosmetic dentist, is what I did, and a holistic. And I would
Mm,
say to people, everybody has 1 minute. So even when I don't take the time, I go to myself, I just like hear myself talk. Everybody has 1 minute, Joan. And I sit down and I give myself
mm,
that. And
mm,
it's interesting you talk about the crash. I obviously did not learn from that time because I've had other smackdowns. I had a near-death experience. I was crossing the street in New York with my second husband at the time, and and we were hit by a taxi making a turn. The light was ours, nobody was around, didn't even see the person, was racing down the street. It was winter, it was cold, there was snow. He made the turn, and I don't even know how I did it, but my husband was on my right side, and so he was the one who should have been hit first. Just like when there are mothers who lift a car for a child underneath, somehow, because he was more frail than I was, I popped him back to the sidewalk. I have no recollection of it, but clearly
Mm,
that's what happened. He had no
mm,
injuries. I was underneath the taxi. My left big toe was under the tire. My right ankle was totally crushed. They didn't know if I could have my foot because my ankle had to be rebuilt. I had
mm.
surgeries over 3 years, and talk about, yes, I had to teach myself how to walk 3 times. And I really
Wow.
learned about those moments of the pause. I always, and I laugh now, I think I love dogs. So I always think pause. And it just it gives me that space of ease, because it's not always easy to be in the pause when the all the
Mm,
stuff comes up.
mm,
That was really That was a big smackdown. And I couldn't do anything then. I was really and I also learned a lot more about the vibrational medicine that I share with people, because I needed it. I needed it in a way that I had never needed any of this stuff before. And I'm very clear in life about need and want. I wanted it, and I needed it to survive, to create the trajectory of my life, because it was very clear to me that I was not seeing myself. I was not seeing really the depth of why I'm here. And I think, and that wasn't that long ago. It was in 2015. So I had already sold my health center. I was doing a- I had a little dental practice on the side, and I was doing a lot of volunteer dental work. I went down to New Orleans during Katrina. There were calls for that. And then it was taking up too much time. And I was also doing acupuncture at the time and craniosacral. So the whole thing just imploded. And I just had this space where I really had to shift everything. And I got very clear with where I was, because I literally I saw myself above everything. I saw up and I didn't even understand. I saw myself up and down. I saw the avenue, and I saw literal things. I don't, it was so wild, and I actually saw the filament of myself from my
mm,
body. It was just the strangest thing. And from that, I really got very deeply into my own process of how to how to move time and space.
mhm.
Because before it had been oh, this is happening. I want to get there faster. I want to have more time. I want to whatever, but it wasn't really intentional. Now
Yeah.
it's all intentional, and that changes everything. It was
Hmm.
very strange.
Yeah. Yeah. Intention, as I see it, is like the energetic scaffolding that allows us to create things in the physical world. And I want to speak to that point in time where you were doing dental work, you were doing cranial sacral, you were doing acupuncture, and it sounds like your energy was scattered in a lot of different places. And I see a lot of business owners come to my work from this place. And, we can put the scaling strategy on top of the energetics all we want, but it's not going to really land for someone unless we look at why the energy centers are so scattered, like what's happening. And what I notice, both in other people and in myself, is that we actually end up having these like fractures in our psyche, in our spirit, in our energy that have like a whole identity and a whole like somatic experience and life force that is not communicating with the whole system. And this is what creates that scatteredness of, okay, maybe I'm doing like one type of practice here and then over there, and then, you know, I had that experience when I was teaching yoga, I was nannying, I was doing Reiki sessions, I was doing sound healing, I was managing the yoga studio. And so my energy was in so many different places. And what allowed me to really bring it into center was reconciling my relationship with these different parts of self so that I could create integration in my system. And when I speak of integration, I mean like I work with polarity integration in the body. So if we're talking about, let's say, grief, well, grief is a polarity of love. And when we can teach the system to toggle back and forth between the felt sense of that expansive, warm glow of love and the like crippling, turning inward, painful density of grief with more ease, then those parts are communicating on a deep unconscious level. And so I want to hear in your worldview and the methodologies that you work with, what does that process of integration look like in your own experience? And then how do you transfer that to your client work?
You know, I love this conversation. Whether we're on a podcast or not, I'm very happy that we're here
Me
communicating
too.
because it's really just so, it's so heartfelt to feel the understanding between us because
Mhm.
we've had very similar experiences in very different ways. So for me, it was totally, absolutely, I didn't know how to bring all the parts together. And what really happened for me was the big smackdown was when I realized that no matter what I was doing, I did not feel this self-love that I wanted to feel. I did not feel accepted in the world. I felt so separate from everything and everybody. And I noticed that as these things kept happening because I kept wondering, like, okay, what's going on now? What's happening here? And then when all of life started happening, like the lifing, the parents die, and this and that, I really had to say, okay, I do not want to be living in a space for myself. I wasn't even at the point where I was really integrating it the way I do now with when people really ask me what I do, it's such a gestalt of things. What I did for myself was I took a big look. I sat down and I said, okay, what's missing here? What is it?
Mm.
What doesn't feel true? And it really was painful. It was painful because I was not able to. Now I can choose the frequency I want to be on, and it's like going to the subway station or the airport. Oh, I think I'll be on this jet stream or I'll be here. And yes, I'm holding this grief and I'm also here. How is that possible? It's what you were just talking about. And what happened was I just said I think what really changed my whole life was, well, everything changes your whole life. That's true. But more recently, COVID was so dramatic, and many of my husband had passed. Many of my friends had moved out of the city. I'm a big walker. I walk miles and miles and miles. I don't know if it's because my ankle was rebuilt. I have no hardware left. I made them take it out because I didn't want any. And even the surgeon said to me for the third, he goes, I said, you told me would take it out. And he said, I know. And it's a tough surgery, and it was a hard one, and I'm glad I did it because it gave me more
Mm.
facility. Or even if I think you can have anything and make anything work, and yet for me, I wanted it out. And so I just said, I don't really know what I want anymore at all. It was the total, and I wasn't devastated. I just said, started taking these pleasure classes. I gave myself like a PhD in pleasure.
I
I
love
I took classes with someone named Lauren Harkness, erotic sovereignty. I'm listening to people, and I also worked with her personally in person during COVID. She was in New York, and I also took her classes. And I hear all these women talking about their desires, and all of a sudden, another smackdown. What are my desires? I don't even know what they are. Everybody's saying this is this and that. And I sat there and I said, OMG, what are my desires? And I need to know what they are. I need to get in touch with who I am. And this was not that long ago. Because it was an evolution, of course, went through so many stages. But the most recent was that where I said, I really want to know what my desires are all the time.
Yeah.
And then I got into all of the pleasure and the all the different orgasms and all the and BDSM. I learned how to tie ropes. I did everything. My friends were like, "What are you doing now, Joan? What are you doing now?" And I was that young, and I didn't even think that it was an issue. I was like, "Yeah, I don't care. I'm not leaving this planet until I go to a play party." I'm not. My friends were like, "We're going to go there and be buck." And just, I said, yeah, I'm not leaving until I try as much as I want. And
Huh.
so, I did that. And that's why I can say, I know I got on the stage at Living Brave Live and I said, I'm the best sex of my, and it's true. Why is it true? Because first of all, I learned a lot. I learned about Tantra and I learned all of the things. But it was not really that. It was because I learned how to be the fullness of myself. Because
Mm.
when you share sexual expression, or you even just have it brought to you, or you're the receiver totally, if you don't, if I didn't know what was in my heart, what I really desired, and what I could connect with unapologetically, and
Mm.
I remember my partner now said to me, he said, I've never heard anyone make sounds like you. And I said, isn't that amazing? Because I never used to do that. It was like once we heard the dog barking next door, it was like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm proud. So I think a lot is interwoven into the pleasure of life. And it's not
Mm.
just about sex for sure. It's about everything. It's, why do I choose this cup? Because energetically, and oh, this brings me into what I do with clients, which I like. This is one of my favorite cups because of the color. The green is about the energetics of smooth movement, the energy
Mm.
of springtime, creativity, money, also green, and just the ability to really choose life as you desire. And then inside is the red, so that's the heart connection. And from the energetic meridian points of view, it would be liver gallbladder, which is much more than the organ, it's the whole pathway. And the heart, having the open-heartedness at choice, not to be open-hearted when it's not serving us, because that's also something. It's like not as a boundary. In fact, it's really interesting too. My family, there were no boundaries in my family. It was like boundaries. Had no idea what that meant. And so when I started working with Lauren and I'm hearing people talk about boundaries, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. And then I said, I don't need boundaries because I have standards for how I want to be in the world. Boundaries, sure, it was a beginning step. And it's not necessary because when you choose and you give off the energy of living a certain way, then that's just the way your life is.
Hmm. Yeah. I always say that boundaries set us. And when you're talking about like exuding this energy and that's how your life goes, well, that is the energetic boundary. Your energy field, your aura is the boundary. And like we can think about setting boundaries from the outside in, from this like mental place when we're first learning it. But really, the ultimate goal is to get to that place of beingness versus thinking and then trying to create separation and like walls. Boundaries are really meant to teach people how to love you. And when you are starting from that place of self-love, then that's just exuding and people are responding to that. And you don't even need to verbally communicate. Your energy is communicating for you. I want to take it back to the conversation on pleasure and desire because this is a pivotal point in any woman's life when she chooses to recognize all the places she's been operating out of obligation that's been externally imposed of I should mother with, like traditional values of being conservative. I should work with clients in a professional relationship. I should speak about myself and my world in XYZ modest ways to, okay, actually, what is true for me? What do I want? What makes me feel lit up? And there's this conversation, if we want to bring it into energetics, of like the womb space and our throat space of like, okay, what is my original creative energy that is my sexual energy, that is my sensual energy? They're all this communication of life force. And I believe that we're seated with our big desires of what we want to create for planetary change, of what shifts for the next generation. But then there's also those like little desires in each interaction, in each relationship of like, what do I want sexually? Like, what do I like? What feels good? What turns me on? Am I going to allow myself to make sounds that are loud that the neighbors might hear because this energy is being expressed, is moving through my throat? And I remember when I was going through my like erotic awakening, we can call it, I started to have throat orgasms. And it would just be this loud sounds that would come out of my throat that would rise from my root. And it's when we're orgasming, like we're opening our energy centers to allow that like creative life force, that sexual life force to move through us unobstructed. And in that state of like surrender, whatever is there is holding pattern is then being released because we're not in control. When we're holding things, when we're repressing our expression, when we're repressing experiences that we had from car accidents to family dynamics of being the space holder, the fixer, the helper, there is a very embodied, pleasureful, desire dripping pathway to explore what, we could call healing that is like the original way of like human beings in our like primal essence. And I find that a lot of like modern norms of okay, you have like an issue, go to therapy, you have an ailment, go to Western allopathic care. In my perspective, that's like the last resort. There's so
Always.
much that we can do for ourselves through cultivating this erotic charge that is our life force. And I love that you're like out here at your age and I think you're also Jewish, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, your like religious background, you're like, I'm having the best sex of my life. I'm exploring all these things, and you're really like shattering all these norms without being in this fighting energy. You're not trying to um like say like that way's wrong, this way's right. You're just being you. And that is what we want to invite our people yes, in our businesses, but also like our partners, our family, our siblings. We want to invite them into this full expression. And hmm, just talking about this, I feel like the energy transfer, I
Just
feel
like,
myself heating
uh,
up.
I know, me too, I, and I used to be someone who I was so intent on convincing people about this
Mm,
was the years ago, not now at all. And just what you said, it's about just embodying who we want to be. I live by two pillars now that just came to me several years ago because I was feeling thwarted by being the fullness of myself. And I said, no, okay, what someone says, it's not really my business. It's theirs. And
hmm
then what gives me pleasure now? And I put the umbrella of love and kindness over that because there are a lot of things that don't project that into the field, into the world. And the reason really I'm here doing any of this online is because 4.5 years ago, I just got this huge calling message. I didn't even realize what it was at the time. It was like, I have to teach my family what I've learned. And I'm gonna
mm,
weep because it's so dear to me because the world doesn't have this in so many ways now. And I think what we're doing, heart-led, mostly female entrepreneurs, sure, there are men as well. And
mm.
that's becoming more so with younger men, the men of my generation. And my partner has learned a lot from me. He's like, he doesn't even know where he is anymore. He's like, and that's in it's, it's a game. It's a
Mm,
game of life, like how we evolve and how we interact. And pleasure is the way that really got me to this space of full self-acceptance. And I never really, of course, I had sex the rest, the earlier parts of my life, and I had orgasm and but I've never had before, like what they talk about, the full body. And what is the
mm,
full body? It's like what you said, you let everything, and it can last long time because it's like not just a one shot. It's like zoom, zoom, zoom.
mm,
And to feel that deliciousness because our soul desires it and for no other reason. And
mm.
that's pleasure really is our birthright. And that's everything. People always ask me, so what do you do when, the shit hits the fan? What do you do when all these things happen? Well, I'm human. I have a human experience. And then
Yes.
at the same time, I go, do I really want to hold this now? Do I really want to be here now? And no, I usually don't. And so I've developed this little, it's a funny little hack. I go, okay, I don't even say anything. I just do it. It's like I put it in my pleasure pussy bank. I actually hear a like bing, like when people had piggy banks. I feel a
Yeah.
womb like that. So I go boom, and I just allow it to feel some sensual expression. And that really transforms everything. And then, do I still have some stuff to work out? Sure, we all do. We're human. We're having the human experience. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We'd be like the angels who never had human experiences.
Yes.
And I'm happy to have both because it's like yesterday. I did a live while I was putting on makeup, getting dressed, because I was having some feelings about seeing everybody and the emotions and all of that. And I was starting to squabble with my partner. And I was like, and I said, oh, I'm just having my human experience and allow it. Just allow it to be. I don't have to act about it. I don't have to react, which is the key, is the reaction. And you had asked me before, we keep riffing on so many things here. I wanted to say, what do I teach my clients? I teach my clients what I taught myself, which is of course, I have a million different toolbox things. I have, I do Reiki, sound heal, all of the things. But what really the main thing I do is I take the energy, I see where it is. I go into my body because the body is, and also because I went to medical school, I'm very much into the body. So I go into the
Hmm.
body, mine, or I ask my clients to. I love doing these activations, and people always want those. Can you take those activations out of that master class they asked me of my last master class and put them together? So I did in one of
Oh.
the things I'm offering. And so what I did was I just said, okay, I'm going to bring this all inside. I'm going to go to my place of awareness. I'm going to use my breath like yoga. We all learn this kind of breathing into the space, but somehow, and I had to also release a lot of pain from the different surgeries and things I've had happen. And so I really use that as part of it. And I would go into the space, and instead of breathing in the moment, I would breathe in on the exhale into the space because to me, that was manifestation. I was able to take this air, this nidus of pain or discomfort or just awareness, breathe on the exhale, breathe in as though I was a dustbuster, but instead of sucking up the air, I was pushing it out to open the space so that the cardiovascular flow would improve, the oxygenation, if you're looking at it from the medical point of view, but also from the soul point of view. Like I was creating space in my body to receive pleasure as opposed to pain. And then noticing what happened with it. And just recently, because of being at Shoshana's World and all of that, I did a 5-day masterclass. Then I did a challenge for 21, no, I did, it was 12-day challenge of neuroplasticity. And from
Hmm.
that, it was really great. I'm going to do that like every year because, first of all, I actually live my life that way with the neuroplasticity things. However, doing it in community,
Creates a whole
so
morphogenic field that amplifies
really, I
everything.
loved it. So juicy. And it gave me like a download of, oh, add this. And of course, I know about fascia. I mean, not only from the medical point of view, but I'm not a big weight trainer now, but a few years ago, I was really into heavy weight training. Now I walk 7 to 11 miles and I'm happy. Um, and do qigong, some other things. But I was really not understanding that I could shift that space with the fascia because I would do the awareness, the breath, and then follow where the fascia was unwinding because fascia, it's like the rubber band meat suit we live in. And what is it? It's all our neuroplasticity. It's our patterning. So if we've learned how to do things one way, so you use your non-dominant hand and that changes all the fascia. And I
Hmm.
noticed that in the areas of discomfort I would have, if I followed the sensation of not just that one area, but the
Hmm.
whole rewind,
Hmm.
life changed. And so I was so grateful to the group, and I told them, and I did a separate little activation class for it. I said, I'm just adding this because I'm so grateful for all of us that this happened, and I want you all to know what downloaded for me. And that was
Hmm.
big. So I would say, sure, I have a million tools. We all have a lot of tools in this area, and I love my tools. They're great. But really, if I working on someone either on Zoom or remotely without any visual or in my office, I still see people. I have a small office now near my apartment, and I do some in-person things. People, that's what they want to know. They want to know how to go into their bodies and shift the pain, the challenge, because it's all, it's the mind body experience. And when I
Hmm.
have facility with that, I could, I love my tools. I grateful to have them to know, oh, this color will do this or this will do that, or I could tap here and this changes everything. And they're great. But if I could only have one tool, I need nothing except this knowledge of my breath, the awareness, and the fascia. That will change everybody's life.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you bring this conversation forward. And I'm actually going to be having a podcast soon with the fascia expert. So we're going to get
Oh,
deeper
I
into
love
that
that.
one.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got what I call fascinated when I was studying yin yoga because it's all about the fascial network. And what happened actually, because I was still doing in-person hands-on Reiki sessions, is I actually was able to see the fascial network and its connection with the nervous system, like kind of like X-ray vision, and feel it in my hands and in my body as well. And such it is the most powerful tool, the breath, the awareness, and like that really grounded body connection of all of those little places. And so how I apply this now, it's like I know how to go into my body and to guide other people into those specific spots to transform what was pain into power, into pleasure, into expression. And that really is the shift. That's like the fundamental core of like any work that we're doing with ourselves or with our clients. It's like creating those shifts, creating that polarity inversion. And yeah, I just got really excited that you brought that conversation forward around fascia and those interconnections. It's not one that I hear that many people speaking about, but it is a really exciting discovery of like that deeper layer of interconnection because we can have this like spiritual philosophy of like we're all connected, and that's beautiful, and it is much more powerful if we can ground it into that embodied perspective so that exactly like we're empowered to not only perceive that way but actually orient into connection from that way.
That's so true. And that's what really brought me to do this work online. It was just such a crazy lark. Oh, I'm going to teach people what it means. The first course I did was called Awaken. I came to it, I said, within 3 months, I had never done anything online. Within 3 months, I just said, I'm doing this now. And then I was having some surgery for my eye, and I said, was going to do it over 3 months, like 5 days or something. And I said, oh, I have to do it now. Who knows what's going to happen? I can't wait. I sent it
Mm.
out to, I didn't even at the time realize about promotion, anything. I knew nothing. I sent out a bunch of emails to people. I had 10 or 11 people in within like 3 days. I did it in 1 week. And people actually got what who knew nothing, who really
Mm.
didn't understand what it was like to even have consciousness of themselves or any alignment. They got it. And that was the thing and then I just started moving it forward. And now the family follows me and they get it and all of that. But at the beginning, which I thought I was doing it for all the kids in the family. And when they weren't picking up on it, I said, well, I'm going to throw it out to the world.
Yeah.
I love what you said about because there aren't many people who s- who I can relate to in this way, who say what you just said. I too see it's like I'm able to see as though I'm inside the body.
Yeah.
I can feel, I can move the things that are stuck. And of course, I'm just creating the impetus for the movement. The person is healing themselves or creating the movement in themselves, but it's like a little jump start. And once they
Yeah.
feel it, it's like, oh. And when I see people in the office here, well, also, if they're online, it's so funny how, and I had no idea this would translate to multiple people, or I used to do before Zoom. I Zoom wasn't even an entity when I did remote healing for things
Yeah.
like when I first learned Reiki, and that was really the
Hmm.
tipping off point. And then all the other things created more texture to the ability of what you said, knowing the spacing and just it sounds Star Warsy, like to
Right?
go into the body and know where there's holding, where there's it just wants to be free. And then
Hmm.
just basically tell it it can be free. And then the person takes off. They're on the table sometimes or in the Zoom room. I do an activation or I'm moving things and I'm very big on moving my hands. It just is the way I connect the energy. And people are like, and I never knew it would translate to masses. But it's so cool that we can do that. I mean, I envision wanting to do that for whomever wants to be present. Like, let's get on stages and move the energy so people have a sense of their own their own power, their own pleasure power, their own life force. We forget there's so much inundation of boom, 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 boom. And that's a lot of things relate. And I see a lot of clients who have very similar issues. And have
Yeah.
studied with the Taoist mentor who's like the Dalai Lama of Chinese medicine. He teaches all over the world. I've been with him for at least 30 years. And I never really understood a lot of the things he said at the beginning, but they called me. They were
Yeah.
like, I can't have, it was like, I have to hear this. I have to hear this. And one of the things was choice. And I never understood. It was like, okay, choice, but how do I have choice? How do I create that choice for myself? And it's what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
It's going into the body and seeing where the things are that are holding us up. And then that frees the mind and the spirit and the whole trajectory of our life journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that you do unique that I really appreciate is, well, many things, but the one that I'll mention now is that you're not creating a dependency with your clients. You are
You see my
create
head?
yeah,
I'm
you're
like,
creating the
no.
impetus like you said, and then you're teaching them how to do it for themselves. This is why I stopped doing like one-to-one energy work in that way, because I found the way that I was taught in the Reiki lineage is you do the healing and then they come back to you in 2 weeks and you do it again and forever. And you can do an attunement and then they can do it for themselves. But I don't want to go through that long process when I could just give you the space to come into awareness for yourself, to recognize that, like you said, it's our birthright to have pleasure. It's our birthright to be able to move energy. It's our organic design as humans to be able to do these things in somehow, some way along the pathway of the evolution of humanity. These natural abilities and dispositions have been buried. So I just want to say thank you for moving through your work in the world with the integrity that you do.
Thank you. That's really moving to me because that's the nidus of everything I do. If anybody ever asks me, what do I stand for? Self-empowerment. And I am someone who, and it's probably because of all the pain of having to be misunderstood. And I mean, nothing that's happened to me, I regret. Even
Mhm,
all of the impacts,
mhm.
because I would not be here without that. And
Exactly.
I am really in the best place I've ever been in my entire life. And it's always been important to me to have the ability to move myself through life, not without others. And not in a dependency way, in a way that I never liked what you
Mm,
said. Oh, you have to keep coming back. No, to me, yes, maybe change of season, maybe something happens in life, you need a little
Yeah.
more help, or just, it's not even help, it's more just like what I see is, I get so weepy because it so moves me, is I feel like I put my arm around someone, I say, okay, we can walk a little path together, and I'm going to show you what I know. You'll make it your own because it's not my way, it's how you integrate it, and then how you bring it forth into the world. And then it's as though we never
Oh,
walked together. And I don't need people to say, oh, she did that for me. No, I never want that. I always want people to go, I don't know how I got here, and I'm here, and I'm sharing this, and I'm being who I am. To me, that's always been very important. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, you're neutralizing this hierarchy that can be this unconscious power dynamic between people when we're in like a leadership role or a service role, and you're really meeting people in that place of power meets power because people come to us and there is a power dynamic. We have this awareness that other people have just forgotten, and it's not a matter of like giving something that they don't have. It's about creating that space to remember. Hmm. Thank
Remembrance is
you.
so, thank you. The
Okay.
remembrance is so important because it's not people, it's not that nobody
Hmm.
knows things. It's how do we go into our bodies and remember what we already know, what we knew at birth. And then we
Yeah,
became socialized and the culture shifted us, and then we learn how to go back as we walk each other to the end
yeah.
of this time.
Hmm. One last thing that I want to mention before I give you the space to share what you have going on in your world and invite people in. Oh, it's 11:11 where I am.
Love that.
Is this socialization normalizes codependency where we're enabling each other and like holding each other in this sense of disempowerment. And what we're offering here in the orientation that we have to leadership, to service, is interdependence, which rather than being a inequitable power dynamic is an equal power dynamic where each person is exchanging their genius in connection rather than dependency. And I want to now give you the space as we close out to share with people how they can connect with you, what offers you have on, and any upcoming events that you want to invite people into.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity, and I'd love to do that. And before I get into that, I have to say, in answer to one of your earliest questions, which just came to me as you were talking about this, was that is my challenge with conventional Western medicine, is the
Mhm.
disempowerment that exists because conventional allopathic Western medicine does not acknowledge that people know about themselves better than anybody else ever could. And
Yes.
to me, that is why I could no longer just do that
Mm,
because it wasn't aligned with the life that I want to see in the world. It wasn't
mm,
aligned with acknowledging people's power and the walking side by side. Sure, this person has skill sets that I don't have. I'm happy to connect with them and hire them to show me their skill sets and not feel disempowered. When I go to a doctor, not everyone, because I really have cherry picked my practitioners at this point, although there are times that's not available.
mm,
There's that lack of first of all, they don't even have time to listen to you. And second of all, they don't think you know anything. So,
Mm-hmm.
like if my partner has to go to something that's kind of significant, I'll try and arrange my schedule so I can go because I don't want them putting this clamp on him that
Mm-hmm.
you don't know, that you are not. Now, I'm happy for certain skill sets to be shared, but the rest is so disempowering. Yes. So, yeah, thank you for that. So, yes, in my world right now, what's going on? I'm so excited. This is my very first Black Friday offer I'm putting out. It's a holiday energy reset. And what I did was I put together the practices, and this is what I share with all of my clients because my idea is not that we have to do things all the time and it's a constant burden. It's that we create a certain way of being in the world that becomes auto reset because it's the path of least resistance. And when we're in the path of least resistance, we have the most life force. And we don't, there's that, the struggle to be something we're not is just eliminated. So
Mm-hmm.
some of those things for me are it's I called it posture up. And it's basically the preliminary stance that anyone who is doing the qigong moves, which is it's like yoga, but it's a different form of energy, mind, body movement. But there's a position you put yourself in, which is very simple. And what I did was I put together, that is in a video. I did another one. What else is in there? The well, my breath work, which I really love. I mean, to me, that's breathing into the space is so critical. And what else do I have in there? They're all so normal to me. I don't even think. I put in the bone marrow washing qigong because there's nothing else that adds to your DNA directly. You can gather energy that's for you only going into all of the directions, the four directions, the above, the below, everywhere from the
Mm-hmm.
field. And you can do movement and pack that energy into your core space. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we did last night. I said, oh, I really need a little bit of this. Let's do it now. 15 minutes a day or whenever. Uh, and so that's my basic holiday. And I have another one coming out, which is a I call it winter bundle or something. And that's also, I'm charging 111 for them and they're full master classes. There are four in
Mm-hmm.
each and they're my really primo things that I live by. And that's why I put them in there. And what else am I? Oh, my very first year-long mastermind. This is really something I am so excited about because it's just like what we've been talking about. Like, it's great to be in a community where the norm is that we can choose our frequency. Now, it's not just the somatics, it's like, how do we live? For years, I loved the Dr. Joe, the Anthony Robbins, Tony Robbins. I loved Greg Braden,
Yeah,
even
me too.
all of those people that are doing all of this wonderful frequency work. However, how do we literally translate that into our day-to-day existence? And I think that's the beauty of what I'm sharing because frankly, I wanted that and I couldn't find anyone who was doing it. So I became that person over the years, choosing all of those things so that I could have them for myself and then share them with others. So this mastermind is really about people who are interested in, you don't have to know how to do anything. You just have to know that you have some sense of nervous system regulation. You have some sense of self-leadership. And we're human. We get little glitches where we lose it.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here. This is for people, and each month we're going to have a particular focus, whether it's love, it's money, because there's so many places we can do things to shift our frequency that I know that are so simple and they become, I mean, here's an example. Okay. if you take, I'll show all of your readers, which I love to show people all the time, from your wrist crease to your elbow crease, when your palm is facing you, can't really see this here. If you brush up gently, like you're petting yourself. So this is one of the most helpful resets. I mean, if I'd love to go through a hospital and teach everybody this, or have the nurse, instead of how you feeling, take more medicine. First, give them this. What are we doing here? We're doing the lung for release. We're doing the pericardium, the sac around the heart. And then we're doing uh, the heart itself. So right from the finger, this is the heart channel, and it goes other places, of course, and here. So in the three, it's like a trifecta of, I often, if I'm having trouble settling down, I'll go like this. All my clients are doing it now. They just like, and they do it to their friends and partners who are whatever.
Mm,
But it's these little energy hacks that
mm,
are useful because, we don't always have someone who's going to go, like move the energy. And if we're
yeah.
not really that skilled in it yet, then these things really help ease the challenges of our life.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm.
those are, and I'll pop to you some of uh the links if you'd
Yeah,
like.
we'll have all the links in the show notes to how to get in contact with you, your offers, all of
Great.
that. So thank you so much for leaving us with that gift. And it reminds me of when used to work with children. I worked with children that were on the spectrum, and that was one of the main like resource tools that we'd always get to. Be like, okay, like give me your arm, and I'd do like that. And at the time, I wasn't even like thinking about the meridians. It was just intuitive, like how do I help this child in this moment? So I was like a fond memory that you brought back there.
Beautiful.
So thank you for this conversation, for your presence, your energy, your stories, and for sharing your offers in the world and all that you are and all that you do. I really appreciate you and this time we've shared.
Thank you, Shanice. I really so grateful to also share and listen to your gifts and to get to know you a little bit. This is really wonderful. I feel so like-minded here. I feel such a
Yeah.
heart connection because of our perspectives. And thank you so much for this opportunity to share this with the world because that's really all I care about now.
Yeah, absolutely. So felt. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.